Protecting the world's strongest economy, his own. At least that was the message from U.S. President Joe Biden in his State of the Union address last night. And as you heard there, it's one of the few things he talked about that is a popular message with voters from all parties. What does more protectionism, though, mean for this country, for Canada? Kirsten Hillman is Canada's ambassador to the U.S. Hi, Ambassador Hillman. Good to see you as always. Thanks for making the time. Were you surprised to hear another Buy American announcement in last night's State of the Union address?
So I guess the first thing to say is it's not a new announcement. What the president was doing, he was highlighting that they are now in the implementation phase of the Buy America provisions that are in the Infrastructure Act that was passed over a year ago. So those provisions haven't yet been implemented. The guidelines around implementing them are under development. So he was talking about that process, a process that, by the way, Canada is actively involved in as the U.S. considers how to do that and trying to make sure that they do so in a way that is respectful and is good for Canada. And
so when you say that, have you been provided assurances then that whatever he was making reference to during that speech does not apply to Canada?
No, we're not in a position of achieving assurances at this point. I think that really what we're doing with the Americans is what, frankly, we've been doing. Buy American policies aren't new, right? They've been in this administration, they were in the last administration, they've been around for over a generation. And so we find ourselves, perpetually really with the Americans when the policies come up, trying to explain to them that the objective behind their policy, which is to create good jobs in the United States, is obviously a very good objective for them, but that cutting Canada-U.S. supply chains, cutting us out of the process when we have these very deep and integrated business relationships actually isn't job creating, it's job cutting. So we do that. We've been doing that for many months now. And as I say, this public comment period is going to be coming out as these guidelines are put out for consultation, and we will continue that process with the Americans in a very detailed and technical way.
How much more difficult from your perspective is it to, I guess, see that explanation? And I know what the explanation is that's being provided, that this doesn't make it cheaper. It actually makes it more expensive to do the stuff that they want to do if they were to, for example, exclude Canada. How much harder is it to, get resonance for that explanation or with that explanation, given the way in which you could see, even last night, it was so evident that there is cross-party, even extremes of either party, cross-party support for that, the genesis of protectionism, the notion of Buy America only.
Yeah. I think that's a really important question, and I think it's really important for those of us like me and my team here, whose job it is to go in and find a way to protect and advance Canada's interests in the face of those policies, to understand how deeply popular these policies are. And the reason that they're popular is because the notion that this is for U.S. government contracts, that the U.S. is going to spend taxpayer money on buying goods that are made in the United States by Americans is a very compelling policy. And as it applies to any other country, I really don't have anything to say on that. But what I can say is that when it comes to our integrated economy, where the vast majority of what the U.S. sells to Canada and what we sell to the United States are inputs into other products, we are able to make the case that that kind of policy objective that they're trying to achieve isn't achieved, of creating jobs in the United States, isn't achieved through cutting up and breaking down those well-established supply chains. I'm not saying it's an easy case to make. We're constantly vigilant. We keep working on it all the time, but we've had quite a bit of success to date since these policies have been popular, as I say, for over a generation.
And I certainly wouldn't take away from some of those wins, but ultimately, if the case you were making were successful, would we be hearing the kind of stuff that we did in last night's speech? Or would you, for example, already have assurances that Canada was exempt from whatever it is that the president was referring to last night?
Well, I think that it's important to recognize that this is a speech where the president it's a political speech where the president is talking about his objectives in terms of domestic job creation in the United States. It isn't a speech that is targeted towards a Canadian audience or targeted towards a Canadian government interlocutor. It's a speech for his own citizens. And it is his policy to, as much as possible, bring jobs into the United States. We're just saying that that's not inconsistent with maintaining strong supply chains with Canada. So I think that we have to look at this speech in the context in which it's given and the purpose for which it's given.
And I get that. It's political, it's not necessarily policy driven, but the politics often do impact the policies that are pursued, right? The fact that this is so popular. I was looking at this Navigator research that measured the audience reaction, and collectively across party lines, when they measured it, it spiked the highest during the parts when he was referring to Buy American. And I know we've heard from, for example, Canadian manufacturers and exporters today who are concerned about what it could mean, calling the promise bad news for Canadian manufacturing and asking for a strong, quote, strong response to push back. I know that you and the federal government and many provincial governments have employed this kind of Team Canada approach, working back channels as much as possible and diplomatic means. Are you at a pause at all to consider being more public-facing, more bolder in your approach? Is there any reason to change your approach from where you sit?
Those are questions that you kind of assess continually. So sometimes being public and very vocal and loud about an issue is the best way to move it forward. Sometimes having discussions behind the scenes is a better way to move it forward. And we make those decisions based on the context here in the United States and what we are learning from everyone we're talking to. We have made no secret of the fact that we believe that Buy American policies as they apply to Canada, any new policies or new application is detrimental to the binational relationship and is detrimental to U.S. jobs. We have a lot of supporters on the Hill in Congress behind me, and even in the administration who understand the arguments we're making. But we need to make them. We need to continue to make them, and we need to show with concrete evidence why that is. And we also have to be willing to be firm when that is the right moment. And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's no lack of firmness here. We are very clear that these policies don't make sense in the context of the Canada-U.S. economic relationship, and frankly, in the context of us right now wanting to make sure that our critical supply chains are resilient, that we are depending on our best allies to make sure that our economies are strong. We're making all of those arguments in private and in public.
When is the moment to be firm? Is it, and I'm not asking you to look into a crystal ball, but is it when you hear a speech like you did last night, or is it when, for example, those, the regulations come out and Canada is not exempt? Is it retaliation that makes a firm response?
Well, I think there are quite a few steps in between those two moments that you've indicated. So there was the law was passed. The guidelines that apply to the law are now being developed. We have been in constant touch with the administration around that and with Canadian industry to get the information from them that we need to be able to demonstrate the effects of this law and the guidelines that they're going to put in place. That is continuing, and that is continuing in private discussions, but of course we will make public commentary during the public comment period. And we will mobilize our allies on the Hill, right? It's not just the administration, but it's also our allies on the Hill who come from jurisdictions here in the United States that rely on Canadian inputs so that their companies can bid on federal contracts. That's another whole group of individuals that we work with. So it is a sort of a variety of public and private conversations that probably lead to the best chances of results.
I'm just out of time, Ambassador, but I wanted to ask you quickly before I let you go. Is this on the agenda when the President visits Canada?
Yeah, our binational supply chains and making sure that we are working together is always on the agenda.
But securing exemptions specifically from what he referred to last night, is that on the agenda?
Well, I guess we'll have to see where we are by the time they get together, right?
Okay.
We'll have to see where this conversation is at by the time they get together. But the Prime Minister has often raised Buy American policies with the President, most recently in Mexico. So yes, they talk about this fairly regularly.
Okay, Ambassador, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time.